Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to be installing the GTX 1080 copper water block onto the GTX 1080. First things first, let's unbox the GTX 1080 EK water block. These shipped from Slovenia. They got here yesterday, and DHS International Express took only, I think, 4 days to get here from Slovenia from when I placed the order, because Europe doesn't really care about the United States Memorial Day. So the manual is very bare bones but simple enough to follow, and you have all of the mounting screws, different lengths for if you want to attach the water block with the backplate or not use the backplate and the water block. Thermal paste Allen keys for installing the fittings. Plug up the ports that you're not using, and the water block itself. I just went for the copper version instead of the nickel version. I've never owned the copper version before. I think my previous version was acetal and nickel. So this time I'm just going to go for a more minimalistic, should I say minimalistic? I don't know, maybe like a simpler copper look instead of the dark black acetal plate over the copper block. So that's pretty much it for the unboxing, and now let's go through the actual installation process of the water block onto the GTX 1080, and I'm going to be using the water block box as my working surface to install it. Here are some supplies you'll need that do not come with either the graphics card or the water block: precision screwdrivers, Q-tip brand Q-tips, or Ramrod brand Q-tips that I use to clean my gun because they're a lot more durable and they leave less lint. Cotton swabs, paper towels, or toilet paper will also work in tandem with isopropyl alcohol, as high of a percentage as you can find, to clean the residual thermal grease. It's also a fantastic idea to have a repository of some kind for all the screws that come off of the stock cooler, in case you ever have to revert it back to its regular condition to either sell it or for warranty / RMA reasons. And also, it's a good idea to have a mechanism to ground yourself. Behind me is a refrigerator. I can touch it every now and then to ground myself. I believe most appliances with metal surfaces should work as a good grounding surface. Also, your PC case, power supply that is plugged in or not turned on with an anti-static wrist strap thing should work as a grounding mechanism too. Okay, I'm going to start by removing the backplate of the stock GPU. The first four are always the heart. I take a little bit of elbow grease to get them out because they also compress against a spring. Okay, next, I'm going to remove all of the really small screws securing the backplate to the PCB, and these are the smallest screws I've had the misfortune of working with. And here is where the screw repository really comes in handy. And I don't know who at Nvidia thought it was a good idea to use a blue Loctite as part of securing the backplate to the graphics card, but this is overkill on the level of deer hunting with a tank. First side of the backplate has been unscrewed and it just lifts right off. Last screw on the other backplate side, and thanks very much in part to the Loctite, I almost stripped this one, but unlike my Gigabyte GTX 980s, I didn't have to take a screwdriver to the backplate to get it off. Thermal pads that resemble cheese slices. Now here is where the mentally stressful part comes in. The standoffs have to be removed with pliers. I've tried needle nose pliers, couldn't get good enough grip. I've tried to use drill bits, the hex extractor type of drill bits, couldn't get enough of a grip, so I had to use these heavy duty pliers. Don't agonize if you accidentally scrape a part of your PCB. They can handle some degree of stress and flex. Think about how often you've either dropped your laptop or your phone. So just get it started, then you should be able to finger it out the rest of the way. And again, I did take a screwdriver to my GTX 980, accidentally drilled the corresponding hole that was like right there, way too much. Scratched the PCB. Fortunately, there weren't any connectors, and the part around the hole, that's where it can take the absolute most amount of abuse. Scratching, so it doesn't stop this process from being any less stressful. Taking steel nose pliers to a $700 circuit board, but yeah. So as long as you don't knock the PCB hard enough to either knock some of the components out of position or scratch hard some of the connectors, you should be okay. Next is the significantly less mentally exhausting task of the 2 side screws. These should be the last screws securing the factory cooler, the Founders Edition cooler, to the GPU. And my fingers must be extra sweaty because I cannot grip it. Again, with the Loctite. I'm just saying, I've mounted scopes on long action rifles without using Loctite before, and I'm fairly certain that a rifle would put more stress on screws than a graphics card could ever undergo. Again, with the Loctite. Alright, might take some elbow grease, but the cooler should separate from the PCB now. There we go. Just unplug the fan, PWM, header, and the lighting power, and you should now be free of the Founders Edition cooler. Here we go. Next, thermal paste removal. This should be pretty standard. Next, we're going to cover the VRM modules and MOSFETs with thermal padding. Most of it is pre-cut, but I'm going to have to do a little bit of trimming. But do remove both sides of the protective foil. One side is stickier than the other. I put the stickier side face down. I couldn't tell you either way whether that's the right way to do it or not. The manual doesn't indicate otherwise, so. Now for thermal paste application, I'm just using the one that EK bundled with their water block. Don't get particular about choice of thermal paste provided you're not using toothpaste. They're all similarly effective. Also, don't be too particular about application method providing you aren't using a spatula to spread it. On CPUs, I like to use an X pattern, but for the GPU, I might be able to apply precisely enough to do an X, or it might just come out way too globby. Yeah, I think that's a little much. So I'm going to Q-tip some of that off. So I failed. I tried to do an X, but I should have just done a dot in the middle. Being attentive to proper alignment, it's time to place the block over the PCB. Being careful not to press down hard, because it's not super difficult to crack the GPU die. Okay, flip over. Graphics card. Okay. It should be very straightforward and easy to tell which screws we're putting where. Secure the water block to PCB. There's various length of screws that come with it. I think there's 4 different lengths depending on whether you want to use the backplate or not, but I'm not going to use the backplate. So use the shortest screws that you can find with a plastic washer. All of them have plastic washers regardless of length. So use the shortest screws that you can find. Start around the GPU, then work your way outward with the longer screw going in this slot. If it doesn't screw all the way down, there's exposed threads, then you know to change it. So there's no way that you can actively mess up without trying to. When I get 2 minute turns your first time around, so I'm going to go back and double check the fitness once everything has to be resolution. When I get 2 minute turns your first time around, because I'm going to come back and double check fitness, but you want to start the hospital. Anyway, from the interior to touch on the PCB. This completes the step-by-step guide on how to install your water block to your GTX 1080. The rest of water cooling your GTX 1080 is how you would water cool any graphics card, and I already have several videos on how to install a water cooling loop in your PC, so if you would like to see any of them, click on the YouTube card or on the video annotation. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I was informative and able to help you guys water cool your graphics cards. My name is David, and I will see you next video.